Hi, I'm Big E. I am the general manager of the Boston Shoremen right here in the CBA. This is a welcome to the CBA video where I'm assuming you're a new GM, um, and with the assumption that you know nothing about the league, I want to hopefully introduce you, give you a warm welcome and all that, and also show you what you need to know about the league to hit the ground running, not get too overwhelmed, hopefully. Um, so to start, um, I actually want to jump out of the game a little bit. We will see how my amazing video skills work. I think it worked. Nice. Okay, so this is our Stats Plus page. So first, if this is your first Out of the Park league, all Out of the Park leagues have a Stats Plus page. It's kind of like I'm not. This isn't a perfect explanation, but you can think of it as like the server that runs everything. That's actually like technically the wrong way to think about it, but let's not get into it. And this is a very important and very useful website. Beyond just seeing recent contracts and standings and all that, um, there's a ton of helpful information here, and I would definitely recommend you get familiar with it. Um, One thing that I do is I have a tab open on my phone at any given point in time with the Stats Plus page. Um, and so beyond just this being, the standings for the leagues, you can click on a team. Let's click on my team. And this is every player I have on my team. I'm not logged in, but if I was, I could see what my scout thinks for ratings. Let's look at, Benavides for a second. So my scout thinks he's, a 65, 50, 60 pitcher. Um, and, this is everything about him. You can see statistics. You can see development over time. Um, a lot of really useful stuff here. You also do the draft here. This is, I think, our previous draft. So Chris Fernandez, it looks like he went first overall. We'll get into that too. The big lesson is that get super familiar with Stats Plus, super helpful. And the most important thing for a new GM is if you go over here to links, then at the very bottom, there's this league documents. You open that up, and it will open up this Google Drive. And then you're going to look at this Word document, or I guess whatever that equivalent is for Google. Open that up, and this is the Championship Baseball Academy official constitution. This is very important. I cannot emphasize enough that this is important. What I would highly recommend you do is read through this, and then how about this? Pause the video now, read the Constitution. It's not that long. Um, and then come back to the video, watch it, and then after the video's finished, read it again, and then you'll be like, okay, I get it. Um, One thing while we're here that I want to point out, I'm going to go through a lot of the different ways the league works, like promotion and relegation. I want to bring attention to Rule 3.2.5, which might seem very nitpicky, but I'm trying to help you out, assuming you're a new GM. We have an amnesty clause. Any new manager taking over a team may choose to release one player at a cost of 25% of the remaining salary as opposed to the full salary. To enact this clause, a manager must contact the commissioner and tell him he wishes to do so and which player he intends to enact this clause on no later than 7 days after joining the league. Super helpful because you're definitely gonna find teams. When it happened with me when I took over my team, it had a bad contract, and I just DM'd the commissioner, and next thing you know, he's off the team for a quarter of the price. So good thing to be aware of. Let's go back to the game though, and then I'm gonna break down a little bit more about CBA. It's a promotion and relegation league, which I'm assuming you're aware of. It's a big difference. So um, actually, this would be super helpful with the Stats Plus page. Let's go to this page right here. And all the information in Stats Plus is available in game and vice versa. Well, I think there's more information in game, but um, this is the league structure. We have a Premier League, we have a Silver League, and we have a Bronze League. And these are all the teams in the league. And there's promotion and relegation. And so you'll see there's these teams in green and these teams in red. And what does that mean? There's two ways to think about a team in green. The first is that they're in a playoff spot. And yes, we do have a big tournament at the end of the year, the Tournament of Champions, where you're hopefully um, shooting for winning. It's tough to do. It's mostly done by Premier League teams, but it's been done by Silver League teams before. So if you're in this green, you're in the playoffs, and if you're in the Silver League and the Bronze League, not only are you in the playoffs, you're also in a slot to get promoted to the next league. So if right now the season ended, Vancouver, who finished in first, would automatically, because they finished in first, no questions asked, get promoted to the Silver League. Galveston, and the same thing's true for Indianapolis in the Silver League. If they win the Silver League, if they finish first, they automatically, no questions asked, get promoted to the Premier League. And for these two teams right here, in the lighter green, if the season ended today, Galveston and Detroit, their first round of the playoffs would be a best of 3 between each other. So with Galveston versus Detroit, the winner gets promoted to the Silver League. So of course, there's a huge incentive to getting in first. You have a guaranteed promotion, but you still want to finish top 3 because, even if it's not guaranteed, a 50-50 shot is still big. Generally speaking, getting promoted is good. It's not, there is one downside, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but generally speaking, you're going to want to build to get promoted and get pushed up to the Premier League. And of course, the opposite's true. If you finish dead last, and so you can't get promoted from the Premier League. Once you're in the Premier League, you're just, fighting for a playoff spot to hopefully win a tournament of champions. For the opposite's true, where if you're dead last, you automatically get relegated. So right now, Miami and Mexico City are in the hot seat. And if you finish 8th or 9th, you play each other, the loser gets relegated. So instead of the winner getting promoted and the loser gets relegated, that means that every year there's going to be 2 new teams entering. There's going to be 2 teams leaving the Silver League and 2 teams entering. In the Silver League, there's going to be 4 teams leaving and 4 teams entering. And in the Bronze League, 2 teams leaving and 2 teams entering. So I hope that makes sense. There's a lot of, what league your team is in does impact the strategy you should be thinking about as a general manager. But I hope that part is fairly simple to wrap your head around. Let's talk about the differences between Premier League, Silver League, and Bronze League. The first one I want to talk about is actually the financial difference. So I'm going to leak my own financials for a second. My team was in the Bronze League for a very long time, maybe an embarrassingly long time. But eventually, I got promoted. My last year in the Bronze League, I had a $100 million budget. That's not a lot of money. But once you get promoted to the Silver League, it's going to jump up about $30 million. And then once you get promoted again to the Premier League, that's another $30 million. So $100 million for bronze, $130 million for silver, and $160 million for Premier. And of course, that money does go a long way. Often the top free agents do go to Premier League teams, sometimes Silver League teams, and every once in a while there will be like a crazy situation where a Bronze League team goes all out for a player, which actually did happen. But let's talk about how do you manage a team when you have that low of a budget. The first thing to keep in mind, and this is very important, and I'm trying to make a big emphasis on this, is through the draft. Now you might be thinking like, oh, yawn or whatever, the draft. That's like the least fun thing in baseball. The draft is super powerful in this league, like NFL powerful. Maybe not, but very powerful. So a top draft pick has a huge amount of value for 2 reasons. One is simply that they're good. The second reason, and again, this is a huge point, there is no arbitration in this league. That means when you draft a player, they stay on league minimum for their entire 6 years of service time. And if you want to be, go the extra mile, you can 100% manipulate service time and get a 7th year, which, I definitely did. I'm not alone with that. I do feel a little bad for these guys and their, fake pixelated families, but at the end of the day, you got to win. And a lot of players, think about the value you save by having a good player who's very cheap. Like Elijah, and the flip side of that is, so they're very cheap for a very long time, but once they hit free agency, they typically do get very expensive. You will see Like I really only have like I would say 1.5 like large contracts with the most recent one I got from one of my pitchers, Hampton, and then this starting pitcher who I extended. But if you look at teams that are um, not me, I guess, you do see contracts in the 30, 40, 50. I think we even have one that's $80 million. That was a big move this offseason. So definitely plan around your young talent. You acquire that young talent through a couple different ways, but the obvious one is the draft. Um, I mentioned before that the draft is powerful. So first, I want to talk about why this is an advantage for a Bronze League team, and we're going to go back to Stats Plus just for a second. So we're here. If you go to League, Standings, and then ELO, while it's loading up, we determine our draft rankings through reverse ELO. So this is all 30 teams, and if you're unfamiliar with ELO, it's an attempt to account for strength of schedule. So if you're a Bronze League team and you're kicking the crap out of every other Bronze League team, maybe you win 75% of your games. Maybe you go like 90-30, something crazy like that, or 93-33. But there's going to be teams in the Premier League who have worse records, but everybody knows is better. The reason why they didn't win that many games is because the Premier League has better teams in the Silver League and better teams in the Bronze League. ELO is an attempt to quantify that in terms of strength of schedule. And specifically, it takes if you beat a good team, your ELO goes up. If you lose to a good team, your ELO goes down a little bit. If you lose to a bad team, your ELO goes down a lot. And, if you beat a good team, your ELO goes up. So it's going to shift a lot. So right now, if the season ended, Los Angeles, which is a Bronze League team, gets the first overall pick. And so if you're Los Angeles, you're very happy about that. So I hope this makes sense. And again, how to get there is on Stats Plus, League, Standings, ELO. And another thing I should mention, if you look at, I don't know if we have it here. There's probably a way to look at historical ELO, but there will be at the end of the year when things shift around a little bit, a couple, maybe Chicago, who is, let's say Chicago's a very rough year and their ELO finishes down here. They lose to everybody. The top 5 picks, no matter what, go to Bronze League teams, and that's a balancing, thing, which is a good rule to have. So the advantage to being in the Bronze League is, yes, you're missing out on $30 or $60 million a year. You're probably not going to be a big player in free agency, but you get a top draft pick, which does sound a bit like, bad, but let's take a look at the draft pick, the draft class back in Stats Plus. So this is the 2070 draft class. If you look at the pool, I have every player filtered up, and there is, a lot. There's 6 dudes that with 80 potential plus, I don't even know how many this is. Someone else can count. A substantial amount. So if you have a top 10 pick, you're getting one of these guys. That's a big deal. And I don't even think there's any closers. So this isn't a flawed, there's a reliever, or, so his ratings are inflated. No, these are actual studs. Let's look at Crippen, who my scout thinks is the best. Imagine the value you're going to get if you have this dude on league minimum for 7 years. That's the power of the draft. The draft is so powerful. If you're a Bronze League team, or really any team, you can often just grab a guy and immediately slot him on your roster. Sometimes you won't. This guy is going to be, 21, so maybe you could with him. I would probably give him half a season to continue to cook in the minor leagues just so that he doesn't come up and immediately get shelled. But if you look at Rich Hartley, who's 22, this dude right now could play in the Premier League. I think everybody would want him. This is a dude that's going to go fairly high. He's durable. He's a good hitter. He's a righty, so he hits both sides against both handed pitchers, and he plays a good outfield. This is a dude who will win a Gold Glove in left field. Rich Hartley is going to be very, very good for hopefully a long time. So the draft is super exciting for that reason. You can have I think the draft is it's 12 rounds for a draft. And it's important. You should definitely pay attention to it and get excited for it. I love the draft. I look forward to it whenever it comes around every 2 months. And one other thing is you actually can draft. This is not a mistake. You can draft 15-year-olds. So Logan Davidson and is looking to be an okay defensive catcher with a really, really well, hopefully a good bat. How well you value this bat is of course subject to your own opinion. But there's more 15-year-olds, another first baseman. So that's kind of like a good thing to balance is what are this player's ratings, and how long will it take for him to actually get to my team. If you're in the Premier League and maybe you trade for a low first round pick, I mean, you're always going to take the best player available, but maybe it's not a bad idea to take a 17-year-old or a 15-year-old. But if you're in the Bronze League, if it's the first year of your rebuild and you know you're going to suck for like 3 or 4 seasons, yeah, maybe you do want to get a 17-year-old, or a 15-year-old. Of course, the younger they are, the more time they have for, say, talent change randomness to take into account. Personally, I'm very much, I know right now Rich Hartley would be good, so I would lean if I'm a lower tier league to the younger players. I'm sorry, the older players that I know are going to produce. So, yeah, very powerful. There's good hitters, good pitchers all around. Let's look just at some pitchers just for giggles. Rod Johnson. Um, uh, we have highbrow humor here. So this dude, he's looking like he's going to be good for a long time. He's durable. He's loyal. He looks like he can do it all. He's done really, really well in college. And again, another thing, you can look at this guy plays for TTU. So you can look at the Power Five, look for TTU. I'm assuming that's this team. Yeah, and you can see him, and this is his team. This is all of his teammates. You can see, hey, I'm gonna look at this guy. Does he have any other good teammates? And the answer is a resounding, he does. Josh Taylor, who will probably be eligible in 63, 62. But yeah, it's fun to look at. If you are a rebuilding team, I definitely would spend some time down here. But hopefully that makes sense. And my point of the draft is powerful, and our league goes quick. Again, opening day to opening day is 2 months in real life, so you can definitely stomach a 3-month, a 3-season rebuild. So only half a year in real life. In a calendar year, you're gonna have entire guys who have careers. So we kind of go fast. So, which I love. A lot of history gets built up. Again, we're in 2070. So, I think that is the gist of it. And of course, I talked about the draft a lot, but if you're in the Premier League, you can just sign a really good free agent to kind of make up for that. So typically the Premier League teams, I think in the past 5 or 6 seasons, every team that's won the Tournament of Champions has been a Premier League team, but all of them have bounced around from one league to another. So depending on where you are, you're going to have maybe more of a draft, more of a win now priority. And I'd also be careful. Again, I've talked a lot about how good the draft is, how you have good players for cheap for a long period of time. Be careful if a team asks you, say, hey, I'm interested in trading away. Let's say I'm going to make up a guy, Shivstov, just because I'm mad at him because he wasn't great. Now he's not. Say, hey, I want to trade this guy away. Give me a first-round draft pick. You should really only ever trade a first if you love the guy you're getting back, and the guy you're getting back really helps you win now. So I would always be hesitant trading a first-round draft pick. Even like second-round draft picks have value too, just because our draft is super deep. And I think I mentioned that there's multiple ways to build. Another way to build, and I would be remiss to not talk about it, is through this international amateur free agents. So you look at like Guzman, who was just signed for $10 million. This dude has the potential. I mean, maybe not that good of a glove, but who knows? He's 16, 17 years old. He might be a good catcher one day. Who knows? Maybe in, 10 years, Eddie Guzman is a Silver Slugger catcher. And that's just some guy that got picked up for $10 million, and so I would, even if you're a bronze league team and you have your $100 million budget, I would definitely set aside $10 million for their international guys. All they've all been taken, so everyone who's good is gone. There's a reliever if anybody really wants him. um, but yeah, I hope that makes sense. Um, the big thing to note: draft is powerful, also fun. That's the advantage of being in the bronze league. Money is good. That's the advantage of being in the Premier League. But of course, you kind of have everyone who's left over in the draft. And one thing that keep in mind is teams that stay in the Premier League tend to trade pretty aggressively. However, when you're new to the league, when you make trades, they're not going to be like the wisest trades. So whenever you're going to make a trade, especially if you're new, and I still do it to this day, and this is like my 15th season in the CBA, talk with other general managers about it. You know, um, going back to Stats Plus, um, I can tell you there's a lot of managers that we're looking at here who would be more than happy to take some time, 15 minutes or whatever, and just share some DMs with you on if they would make that trade, if what you're asking is fair, if you're going to overpay or underpay, and it's definitely not frowned upon one bit. Um, I know that I got to the Premier League. I know I probably wouldn't have got there if it wasn't for Carolina because they gave me some good advice. Um, and that's a fun part about the league is it's competitive, but it's not malicious. So hope that makes sense. I hope the entire structure of the league makes sense. It's very fun. Hopefully you're excited to be here. We're always willing to talk. Read the Constitution. I'm going to save Mark, our commissioner, hopefully a couple headaches. Definitely read the Constitution. Um, if you have any questions, let anyone in the Discord know. Other than that, welcome to the CBA. Um, and hopefully you can win a lot of games, but not against my team.